This video contains photos and videos from Universal's Halloween Horror Nights. These photos and videos may be unsettling to some viewers. Thinking about going to HHN but have too many unanswered questions?
Well, this video is for you.
Hey guys, it's Courtney and Seth here today with another installment of
Unravel with the Jackson Travels.
And today we're going to be giving you guys some tips for Halloween Horror Nights if you are a first timer or a scaredy cat. Halloween Horror Nights, or HHN for short, is one of the best and most well-known Halloween events in America. At this event, patrons will observe multiple things. These things will include mazes, also known as the haunted houses themselves, scare zones, scare actors, themed food and dining, as well as some intense shows. This event is not included with traditional theme park admission. It is a separately ticketed event. Universal does suggest that this event may not be suitable for those under the age of 13. This is not a hard age requirement though. Universal just wants parents and families to be aware of how intense this event can be, especially for young children. Halloween Horror Nights typically only takes place in Universal Studios, which leaves Islands of Adventure open to those who may not want to partake in the event. However, depending on when you visit, Islands of Adventure may be holding a Death Eater celebration or the celebration of the dark arts at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in Hogsmeade. This celebration of the dark arts does include experiences and shows with Death Eaters, which are characters from the Harry Potter movies. If you're not adequately prepared for what to experience with these Death Eaters, it can kind of come as a shock to some because they can present themselves in sort of a scary, intimidating way. So for young children who may not understand the movie and the characters, this experience still may be on the intense side. So the Dark Arts celebration only takes place in Hogsmeade, so that does leave the rest of the park open, and Hogsmeade is avoidable if needed. If you're thinking about going to HHN but you're still on the fence, we are going to be diving into some tips for scaredy cats and first-time HHN patrons. And these tips have been tested by yours truly. We've only been going to Halloween Horror Nights for a few years and we're on the fence ourselves about going. So I promise these tips are tried and true and we're going to pass them along to you. So now let's start with tip number 1.
So tip number 1 is to look up the haunted house's POV before you visit.
On the first weekend of HHN, Universal will typically have an influencer event where they invite out YouTubers and other media sources to review and highlight the event. These people are usually allowed to film inside the houses. For regular patrons, this is never allowed. Use these videos to your advantage and familiarize yourself with the houses. Some of the big HHN fans will say this is a big no-no. However, if you are on the fence about the event and need some comfort in order to partake in the event, this is a smart move. Seth and I usually watch the house POVs since it gives us a better sense of what the house is like and where we can primarily find scares. In our opinion, this has never ruined the experience for us. Watching a video is obviously different than being there in person, but watching the video allows us to get past the initial fear of the unknown and truly enjoy the houses. After all, these houses are very well done. They have so many theatrical elements that you won't find anywhere else. For example, the smell of burning food, or flesh, in the kitchen of the Revenge of the Tooth Fairy house from last year. By preparing ourselves, we are able to enjoy and appreciate the houses much more. So next is tip number 2.
Tip 2 is to be interactive with the scare actors in the scare zones.
I know this can sound counterproductive, but let us explain. Scare actors in scare zones have one type of target. They're going to target people that they can scare. This includes 2 types of people. People who run and people who are not paying attention. If you make the first move with the scare actors, you're eliminating the possibility of a jump scare because you're interacting first. This shows that you're actively paying attention and are unlikely to be scared. Also, this experience is so fun and makes your experience special with each scare actor. A simple wave to the scare actor, a conversation starter, or pose for a photo is all it takes.
Last year, I even had a high kick challenge with the HHN Chainsaw Cheerleader, which drew a small crowd. I know it can be scary to make the first move, but I promise that each experience with every scare actor will be an amazing one. And the best part, you won't be scared by a chainsaw running up behind you because you have initiated the interaction first.
With all this being said, do not be that obnoxious person that screams and yells back at the scare actors. Remember, they're there to make your experience a memorable one. You're not there to scare them, so don't be that person.
So next is tip number 3.
Tip number 3 is to stay and scream while it is still daylight.
As you can imagine, this event takes on a whole different experience at night. However, you will have a few hours to participate in the event while it's still daylight. You can start this process by participating in the Stay and Scream process. Stay and Scream is a process where Universal sets up holding areas for parkgoers who are planning to participate in HHN. You can get into these Stay and Scream areas before the park even closes to regular daytime guests. The reason this is a good idea is because you will be released back into the park as soon as the event starts, unlike other guests who are being forced to wait outside of the gate and scan their tickets in. You will have a solid 10 to 15 minutes on everyone else, which will allow you to knock out a house or two and get to scare zones quicker. This will help with the anxiety that may come with being at the event at nighttime, without missing out on any of the houses or scare zones you want to partake in. Also note that you do not need to purchase Stay and Scream if you have both a regular park ticket or annual pass and an HHN ticket. Stay and Scream passes are only needed for those with HHN tickets only, with no regular park ticket. So next is tip number 4.
Tip number 4 is to evaluate the scare zones before actually entering the zone.
For some of the scare zones, you may be able to slightly bypass them by going on the outer edge. For example, there's typically a scare zone on Hollywood Boulevard on the street. However, the outer sidewalks are free to walk on. This may be a good place to start so you can evaluate the scare zone from a safer distance. However, these streets are not off limits to scare actors. They may still come up to you, so remember tip number 2. If you're unable to bypass the scare zone due to its location, like the scare zone in front of the media center, you may need to take a moment and evaluate the scare zone before entering. Each scare zone will have 2 things you should look out for: fog machines and hidden scare actors. For these scare zones, I would recommend walking straight down the middle, avoiding fog machines and hidden nooks where scare actors may be hiding. The fog machines can be very disorienting, which can open you up for a scare. Also, most of the scare actors are going to be waiting towards the sides of the scare zones. By walking in the middle, it allows you more time to see and prepare for the scare. If you walk towards the sides, you will literally be right on top of the scare actors.
Next is tip number 5.
Tip number 5 is to wear earplugs.
A lot of the scare zone houses are extremely loud and include loud, startling noises. If this is something that makes you uncomfortable, consider wearing earplugs to help drown out the noise. On our last RIP tour, our tour guide even wore earplugs as we went through the houses, so there is no shame in wearing earplugs. Next is tip number 6.
Tip number 6 is to be prepared for a long night.
For this tip, I mean this in a variety of ways: walking, staying late, and long lines. This event runs long into the night. Seth and I have stayed as late as 1:30 a.m. after an already long day of regular park admission. I highly recommend going back to your room early in the afternoon for a power nap. Also, be sure to hit up Starbucks before Stay and Scream and get some coffee or something to help with your energy. And I know what you're thinking, why stay so late? Well, most of the rides and house times will drop drastically once it gets late. We were able to go through Texas Chainsaw Massacre back to back in around 15 minutes total at around 1 a.m. So if you aren't wanting to spend the extra bucks on express or a tour, waiting until late night is the best way to see the houses quickly. And I can't say this enough, wear comfortable shoes. You are in for an even longer night if you don't. So next is tip number 7.
Tip number 7 is to buy express passes or tours beforehand.
HHN is a very popular event and is only on select nights during the week for the months of September and October. For this reason, it is very easy for express passes and tours to sell out or for the prices to increase as the date gets closer. We recommend express passes if you only have one night, especially if that night is a Saturday. I would recommend a RIP tour if you're also wanting to know more about the event and specific houses and scare zones for that year. With the RIP tour, you start off in a private holding area with free food and drinks. Then your groups will branch off with a tour guide. The guide will walk you through each house by taking you to the front of the line and through scare zones. Also, you will be told the history of each house and scare zone and be provided with private drink stops throughout the tour. After your tour pass will act as an express pass for the rest of the night, only to be used at rides and attractions once, not houses again. There are also unmasking the horror tours that allow you to tour houses with the lights on. These tours do not take place during HHN hours. If you're still feeling afraid or unsure of HHN houses, this may also be a good prerequisite to actually going through a house during HHN. I say this because you will see the houses up close, lights on, with no scare actors. Express passes work the same way as the traditional Universal Express passes do. They will allow you to skip the line once at the houses by utilizing a shorter line for a shorter wait time.
Next is tip number 8.
Tip number 8 is to stay and watch the opening ceremony.
If you are lucky enough to go to HHN on multiple nights, we would recommend staying outside of the gate for one of those days to watch the opening ceremony. Every night during past HHNs, there was an opening ceremony featuring the characters of HHN for that year. Last year, Jack and the other icons would open the park by hyping up the crowd and giving a bone-chilling performance. This is one of those special HHN moments that you don't want to miss. Next is tip number 9.
Tip number 9 is to pack lightly.
HHN houses are a little different from the regular park attractions. Unlike roller coasters and rides, houses do not offer you the luxury of a locker or a place to store your belongings. So whatever you bring, you're going to be carrying the whole night. This includes through houses and scare zones. So pack lightly and only bring what you need. Also consider what you may pick up at the event. Most people end up buying a commemorative refill cup or treats of some sort. For this reason, I would recommend a small backpack so you can comfortably store all of your items while you partake in the event. The last thing you want to do is drop that expensive refill cup mid-jump scare and break it.
And last but not least, next is tip number 10.
Tip 10 is to take breaks and enjoy the park.
This event can be very intense, so it's only natural to need to step away at times. I would recommend staking out a good spot to relax and get away from the screaming and chainsaws. Some examples may include Delancey Street or the London area. Grab some snacks and a drink and take a much needed quiet moment. This can help to space out the night and provide time outside of the extremely loud spaces. Also, don't forget that some of the regular rides and attractions are still open. Since HHN houses are drawing large crowds, this may be a great time to get in some rides and attractions you missed during normal park hours. Alright guys, we hope you enjoyed this breakdown of tips for first timers to HHN or for scaredy cats. We definitely hope that you get to enjoy and partake in this event very soon. As we said earlier, Seth and I were a little bit nervous and apprehensive before our first time at HHN, but I promise if you put these tips and practices into place, you will have a really enjoyable experience. So please be sure to like this video, comment, let us know what you thought of these tips, if there's anything you would add or change, or if you've never been to the event, maybe if you plan on going now that you've watched this video. And please also don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more Universal content coming soon. So until next time,
We hope to see you on the next adventure.
Bye.